Vajradara Sumatimonish Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumatim Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradara Sumatimonish Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Yerme Chikto Chingi Lo Makyuke Kudan Dagilu Makyuke Sundan Daginga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yerme Chikto Chingi Lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Svoha Om Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha. Sashi Pöge Chushi Medo Chan Rirab Lingshi Nide Gemba De Sangye Shindu Mikde Ulwargi Drugu Namda Shingla Chöpar Sho Yidamang Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryata Yami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonam Kim Sangye Drupar Sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good morning. One of the things that has somehow always marveled me, I mean, how does it work that we can actually understand each other, or at least we think that we can understand each other? And I was thinking about this one day, and it was very clear. I was in Brazil, in Búzios, and there were teachings. We had teachings in Rio de Janeiro, and then we went back to Búzios, and we were having dinner, and there was a friend who had followed the teachings that I had given at Rio. He was a disciple, already had quite, he had he was a certain age, and he came to me and he said, "You explained so perfectly today how free will doesn't exist." And I thought, what? I don't believe that. So how is it that I explained that? And I said, well, explain to me how how did you get to that conclusion? And then he explained, when we put ourselves in other people's shoes, for example, it's easy to say, if I were you being me. But if I were you with your body, your culture, your education, your like chemical makeup, your karma, all of your predispositions, if I were actually you, how differently would I do from you? And I don't know. I mean, very, very little. And he came to the conclusion, you see, there's no free will. And then that really had me think a lot about it. And today, I want to talk about freedom. What is our real possibility of choice, and where our free will actually lies? If we were to ask ourselves if we are conditioned, we ask ourselves, are we conditioned by the culture in which we were raised, the information we receive? An analogy comes to mind. It's not great, but it works. We're free to buy what we want, aren't we? But there are two conditions. You need to have money, and what you want to buy needs to be for sale, right? Because if I go to a store and I see something that I like, and I say, I'd like to have this, and they say, well, okay, it costs this, so I don't have that money. I can say, oh, but I'm free to buy whatever I want. You're free to buy something, but you need to have that money. And if something's not for sale, does that freedom exist either? No, it needs to be for sale to be bought. Similarly, in this present moment, we're free to make the choices that we want, to do anything, but we're not free from the conditions of the actions created in the past and the conditions in the present. The conditions of the present have to do with our physical state of being, our mental state of being in the present, and the conditions of our surroundings. So we have our inner conditions, our physical and mental state, and the external conditions would be all the interactions with others and what other people do, and then the causes, everything that we have accumulated for beginningless time. So for going back to the analogy of purchasing something, have we saved up enough money to buy that thing? So when when we're in a situation, we're not free from the choices that we've made in the past. We're not free from the information that we've received, the emotions that we've lived, the traumas that we have lived through. We're not free from an infinite number of things. Or rather, it's as if we lived this present through the filters of what we've lived in the past, or what we lived before. Even we talk about our body. Very simple example. I think I have two female dogs, and when I have two dogs. When they are in the woods, and when they see some animals, they don't care about. Others, they really go after to hunt. Luckily, they never catch them, but because they have this instinct. Are they free from this instinct? No. They're not free from their own instinct. The instinct is something that they've brought. Sometimes I'm able to, hold them back, but it's something that comes together with them. And we have our instincts that come out in many different contexts, situations. So when we start observing all of the forces that normally they're five that condition our present. I call them the 5 filters through which we live the reality of the present moment. We have the genetic part, where there's the experience of our ancestors leaves something for us. There are many aspects of ourselves today, that we think it's part of us, but it's something that we have inherited, without getting into the details now. But just to give an example, there are some fears that are inherited, or feelings of trust or hope, that those are inherited from our ancestors. And then we have predispositions that come from past lives. To simplify, we can just call them predispositions, these deep habits that we have within, like seeds that we need to water for them to sprout and grow. And it's very clearly described that it's impossible to live something, experience something that for which you have not created the causes. So we have our predispositions, and then we have number 3, all of the information we've received up till today, everything we've seen, everything we've heard from our parents, coming from our parents when we were really small, for school and friends, up to the messages you read just before coming into the Gompa. Every information that we've received creates one of these filters through which we perceive our reality today. And then we have all of the experiences in the past that we've lived, this feelings of suffering and pleasure, and all experiences. Understanding is something, experiencing it is much different. To explain this better, one of the best examples is the example of salty water at the Kumpen. One day I was in Milan for teachings on the Wednesdays at the Kumpen, and it was very hot. It was summertime, and I took a glass of water to drink, absolutely normal thing to do, and it was extremely salty. And I pretended nothing was wrong. I didn't want to create any kind of strange situation. At the end of the teachings, I called, I don't know who exactly, and I said, taste this water. No, what's wrong with it? No, okay, taste it. There was a bottle right next to the glass. And they tried it too. It was incredibly salty. Long story short, there was our dear friend Linda, who was doing some kind of treatment for cirrhosis, or for anyway, she had been to the seaside and brought back. She had bottled these waters, and it had, kept in the same cabinet as the drinking water, and someone erroneously took that and served. So the next week, I was there. There was the glass and the bottle, and they said to me, "We're positive, Lama. It's the water is not seawater. It's drinking water. Don't worry." And I was absolutely sure that it was right what they said. I had no doubt that the water that I had in front of me was normal drinking water, that it wasn't seawater. But when I took it to drink it, I tried it like just this little tiny sip, and then I drank it. So the experience that I had was much stronger than my understanding or my rationalization. We are conditioned not by what we know, but what we experience. No matter how much I know that something is in some way, if my experience is different, that has a stronger voice. And then here we get into the aspects of having trust, not having trust. There's so many aspects there. So we are inevitably conditioned by our past, physically, conceptually, emotionally. We're not able to make a decision in the present moment that is not tied to our past. We're not able. The fifth filter, so we've said the genetics, the predispositions that we take from one life to another, the knowledge we've accumulated, experiences that we've accumulated, and the fifth one is our physical state of being in this present moment. Body and mind are completely together. Just the sensation of our senses, how good something tastes, depends not exclusively what I eat, but on my physical state of being. It changes on my emotional state of being, my physical state of being. What I taste changes. I read a short time ago when there's oxytocin in our body and we feel feelings of love and we're connecting with someone, and that increases oxytocin in our body, that the senses become heightened, and so we taste more. It's a physical reason, it's not an emotional reason. Physically, the food becomes tastier when we're feeling love from this oxytocin that is produced from this feeling. So these are 5 filters that condition our present. So the idea to be able to make a decision to do something today in a totally free way, free in the sense that it's not conditioned by anything, that's an illusion. Are you following? But does free will exist or not? It's not an easy question if we look at it deeply. Personally, I believe that we do have free will, that it does exist. If we were, when I was a young boy, I went to talk to an astrologist called Seferino. He had always read the astrological maps for my parents. And thanks to him a little bit that I was born, because he had told my mother when my mother was a little bit down, and and he told her to make a list of all the characteristics of the man that you want to have in your life, and one day you'll find him. And she said, okay, let's play this game. And she said, oh, he needs to be this tall like this. He needs to go to work with a tie. He needs to like alternative things. He needs to speak German. I mean, she made a long list. It wasn't an obvious list in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And then that specific day that he had named, nothing special was happening. She went to the mountains with to see a friend, and a friend of the girlfriend of a cousin came. And then they started talking, and she started asking a couple of these things that were on her list, and it was like check, check, check. He spoke German. He worked with electronics, and he danced yoga. I mean, he really fell under. He at the time he wore a tie. I've never seen my father. I wouldn't see my father with a tie now, but after a short time, she went back to the astrologer, and she said, it's amazing, that day I actually met this person. And then he looked at her and he said, you're pregnant. That can't be. I don't believe that. He said, I'm sure. And without even doing the test, she called my father and said, I'm pregnant. And then she did the test, and it was actually true. So this astrologer had an important role in my being here like this. What happens, so once I met him, and he said to me, after he did my map reading, and he said to me something very precise. He said, actually, it's the only thing I remember from that meeting. The things about me I don't remember. But he said, our freedom is like a goat that's attached to a fence. And it has 180 degrees of movement. And what happens to someone is really depends on how long the rope is. And I think what he meant to say was, we think we have a lot of freedom, but we're conditioned by many factors, as we just looked at. But in my opinion, our freedom isn't 180 degrees. Our freedom is maybe a half of a degree. We're not a goat attached to a fence. We're a car that is going, but the steering wheel can only go a half of a degree right or left. That's the freedom that we have. So our freedom can be found within our discernment, in the value that we attribute to things, the choices that we make. Because I'm sure that we have the choice between, should I say this or not? Should I do this or not? Should I go or not? Do I say hello or not? Within our conditionings that we have these very small freedoms. I mean, I have this feeling. I think you do too. No, I'm sure. And this is the fundamental difference that exists between a being that is sentient and a non-sentient being. A rock, for example, is a living being or not? I think so. A rock has birth. There's a moment where the rock begins, and then as it ages, it interacts with the world around it. At a certain point, it dies. Have you ever seen Have you ever seen a rock that is then starting to become sand, or it's transforming into something else? And in that, within its existence, it reacts according to very specific rules. So a living being has beginning and an end and interacts. It transforms. A plant, according to Buddhist tradition, the teachings, a plant is a living being, but not a sentient being. So if you do always the same thing, you will always have the same results. Is that true also with a person? It's much easier to take care of plants than a person. Imagine you go to the plant and the plant says, "I don't like how you looked at me today," or I didn't sleep well. I don't want a flower. Or, you go and do the same things. Or, no, today is the Independence Day. I'm not going to do anything. So, sentient beings, they have an aspect of a perception, a judgment, and there within is the free will. It's within the mind and nowhere else. Our freedom is found in the way that we think and the feelings that we have, the values that we take care of and that we protect. And it's there, or I find myself if I'm in a situation in front of someone and I ask myself, what do I do? That's where my freedom lies. It's when I'm in a situation and I attribute a meaning to that, and I see that there are possibilities, that I have this predisposition, I have these conditions to see this way or to see another way. That's where freedom lies. How can we cultivate our freedom and direct our freedom with awareness? Let me just take a step backwards first. I made the analogy of a car that can just turn the steering wheel like a half of a degree. But imagine if a straight line, if you just go a little bit, it doesn't seem like anything. But if you look at a longer line, we can make enormous changes. So I'm convinced that we have free will, and it's not that we have moments of free will. It's in every moment, in every small choice, and especially in every small thought. There's a part of the teachings of the Mahayana called the development of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is called the mind of enlightenment. It's an inner state of being, of altruism based on love and compassion, of trust in oneself, that desires to develop his own qualities to be at the service of others, and takes the commitment to live in a coherent and healthy way, to cultivate what is beneficial and to avoid what is detrimental. This mental state is one of the most precious things that we can develop. But before we can develop this, there are two parts. There's the bodhicitta of aspiration, or the aspiration for bodhicitta, and the second one is the bodhicitta, and then the bodhicitta, engaging bodhicitta. So imagine we need to take, Shantideva explains it, it's the desire to go and actually going, as said by Shantideva. So before I go, I need to want to go. Before walking, I need to want to walk. So this first part of the aspiration, that's the first part of our aspiration, where we allow ourselves to dream and to imagine, to desire. And it's within our desire, in our aspiration. It's the same thing. Desire, aspiration is the same thing, except that the word desire has a negative connotation, or the idea of projecting our happiness onto something that can't sustain it. And aspiration is actually wanting something that can sustain that happiness. They're the same things. But it's this desire, or it's in that aspiration where there is this great potential for change. It's within our mind. If you look, for example, great governments and systems, and we can see a dictatorship or a system with a lot of power. A dictatorship is extremely afraid of great armies, or is afraid of ideas. And when these ideas are not just ideas but dreams, they become aspirations, desires, then they're even more and more dangerous. Why? Because the desires move people, they move actions, it changes, there's change. And that's why it's important here for us gradually to build up our choices. I was listening to a documentary about human behavior called Dishonesty, the Truth About Lies. It was really interesting. I recommend it if you want to see it. It's a documentary based on research. It was really good, and this author was explaining that according to his research is that people do things based on three incentives. He does something because that helps him avoid a suffering, or he does something because that brings a well-being, or he does something because based on a moral question. There's a kind of commitment to do or to not do. These are the three reasons why we do what we do. And a fundamental point, in my opinion, that we can do to condition our choices, we need to connect certain actions with the benefits that we obtain, the suffering that we avoid, and the moral reasons connected to those actions. The more that this is clear to us, the easier it is to make a decision. In other words, our freedom is not something that comes from one day to the next. It's something that is constructed. It's something that is built up. Let me explain myself better. To be able to have the strength and the determination and the clarity to make certain decisions, to walk in a certain direction and act in a certain way, I need to gradually in my life construct the causes and the conditions to do that. It's not going to come from one moment to the next. And this is built up in our own minds. Mostly. And that's why it's so important to have healthy values and principles. Because when we find ourselves in front of a situation, one of the main things that's going to condition us is our values, what's right, what's wrong. And it's not for nothing that when you start the bodhisattva path to become this altruistic being, when you generate the intention to want to become altruistic, at a certain point you take a commitment and you take vows. Why do we take vows? Because every once in a while we like to do the opposite. Does anyone need to take a vow to breathe? Why not? Because with whether we're aware of it or not, we breathe. Maybe you take a vow to breathe with awareness 3 times a day. Why do you need the vow? Because it's good for you, and often we forget or we don't feel like it, etc., etc. So what happens is it's important for us to tie ourselves to healthy principles. And these values, these healthy values, if they are not cultivated daily, often you just need just a little bit to lose them. We live in times where the many, many inputs that we receive take us towards indifference, towards extreme materialism, towards individualism, towards indifference to the suffering of others. Instead, it's very important for us to see what the attitudes and the behaviors, the values that can sustain sustain happiness for ourselves and for others. Just imagine someone who acts with violence or aggression. It's nothing other than a symptom to a state of suffering and malaise. Have you ever seen someone who's happy and satisfied, joyous and at peace, who acts violently or with aggression? I've never seen that. So what happens is, if we see, we just a little bit more clearly what upholds a state of happiness is respect and gratitude and love and compassion, generosity, sharing, offering. But it's important for us to give value to all of that. And every time in our mind, if we think, oh, how wonderful it would be if I could always be satisfied. How wonderful if I were able to always have an attitude of respect and gratitude and love. Wow, how beautiful would it be if I wasn't so self-centered, and if I could see others better, or if I could have more presence in the present moment. But these thoughts, we need to repeat them again and again. Repeat them again and again. We can spend all day just saying, repeat them. We need a brainwashing. Yeah, more than that, like advertising for Coca-Cola, even more, just a brainwashing. Is there anywhere on the planet where there isn't Coca-Cola? The first time I went to India in 1989, actually there wasn't Coca-Cola. There was Thumbs Up, which was really disgusting. But then I remember, wow. But anyway, is there anyone who doesn't know what Coca-Cola is? So why do they still do advertising? Why do they still advertise? Because to cultivate a desire, it's necessary to always remind people. So we need to do the same thing, but in a positive way with ourselves. Because the more I cultivate within myself a desire, the more I'm constructing my choices for the future. Right now, today, I am constructing my freedom. The choices that I will make tomorrow don't depend on tomorrow exclusively. Depend on what has come up until they depend on today, and today is the past of yesterday. If the present is conditioned from the past, so then today is going to condition what's going to happen tomorrow. And something fundamental for us is dreaming, is desiring, and allowing ourselves to imagine and saying, oh, how wonderful it would be to have a good concentration if I could react always in a loving way. How beautiful would it be if I could not be attached to things and live with satisfaction, or if I were at peace with myself and others and stopped with these conflicts with how wonderful would it be if I wasn't attached to how I think things should be, or how wonderful it would be if I stopped going against the current and I just learned to be a good sailor. When we desire and we aspire towards our future, we are constructing today our choices for tomorrow. And we have the freedom to do that. When we talk about our freedom, it's not just the choice that we're doing in this present moment. It's the way we condition our choices of the future. So every word that we say, every image that we see, every thought that we have, every interaction that we have, everything in one way or the other, it conditions our future. And we have the choice to get home and ask ourselves, should I read a book or should I watch an episode on TV? If for some, there's no choice. The conditioning of the addiction is too strong. And by going to stay there with the abstinence of the abstinence of not seeing the TV show, no, the anxiety is too strong. So the choice to read the book is doesn't exist. But we live in a time where there's this tendency around us to not dream anymore. I remember a phrase. I was listening to a documentary. There were various episodes on Western philosophy, and then there was one episode on Nietzsche, and it explained that Nietzsche talked about modern day, using his words, the ones I remember. It says, when man will abandon God, there will be the last man will be present. And the description of the last man was there would be people who will look at the stars and they will say how beautiful, but they wouldn't allow themselves to desire to reach them. It's because it's too tiresome to try to reach them. So they just accept just staying where they are. So it'd be a time where we say, oh, how wonderful it would be if, but I prefer to stay in my comfort zone, and trying to get there, it would be too tiresome. So I stay in my comfort zone, and I spend my life there within. Is that clear? We need to allow ourselves to desire, to dream. What do we want for our society? What type of society do we want to live in? It's no joke. In what kind of family do I want to live in? What kind of person do I want to be? If we don't allow ourselves to dream, to project onto a beautiful future, someone might say, oh, this is really quite naive. This could never happen. You're dreaming the impossible. You need to connect to your reality. Of course, but I also need a direction. If I don't desire, if I don't dream, then I don't have any direction. If I don't believe in the impossible, then the impossible will never become possible. A little bit like disconnecting from the limits that we feel in the present moment, and we allow ourselves to dream. I've had several experiences where Lama Michel Rinpoche showed me that it's only when we're able to desire the impossible, then the impossible can become possible. That we're here in this temple is an example of that. At the beginning, everyone would have said to Rinpoche, just leave it alone, but he believed in it. And many of us have had the great fortune of following his dream, and this is really beautiful. Often we're not able to dream by ourselves, but if we also follow the dreams of others. And the one dream that has been transmitted to us is being able to live in peace with ourselves and with others. Many have followed this, and they've shown that it is possible. But now it's up to us in this moment to say, I want to follow this dream. So as one of my masters said to me, Chapter Dagon Rinpoche said to me, the first thing that we need to do for something to happen is desire it. And I repeat, it's by desiring something that we construct, we build up our free will. It's thinking of it, it's imagining it, it's building it up, and we can do so much. But to do this, we need to keep our values healthy. We see, okay, this doesn't bring benefit. I won't do this. A fundamental value that's important, in my opinion, is to not become indifferent to the suffering of others. This is fundamental. Which doesn't mean that we need to resolve other people's suffering. We don't have this possibility to eliminate the suffering of someone else, but at least we're not indifferent. At the very least, we want them to not suffer. So we shouldn't justify any type of violence. We base ourselves on the value. We know that violence brings violence. So we don't want to suffer. We don't want others to suffer. Hatred brings hatred. And we need to maintain these principles independently of the context. The how and the why. Is it easy? No. But it's because it's not easy that we need to hold on to it. We hold on to it with attachment. We need to really hold our healthy principles, hold tightly, because those are the ones that are going to help us make the right choices. Like one time, a practitioner, after having been in prison for a long time, once he got out, he was asked once, what was the most important, the most difficult thing that you lived when you were in prison? And he said, the worst thing that happened to me, that was so difficult for me, is when I almost lost my compassion for the guard who was torturing me. It wasn't the pain or the torture. It was getting to a point where he was letting go of this fundamental value, this ability to see others and compassion he felt for others. And that, so much respect for that. In our life, in our small world, we should ask ourselves, what values do I not want to let go of, regardless of what happens? And these are the pillars of for my that will help me make to take decisions in the future. This respect for life, this suffering is of ourselves and for others should be absolutely avoided. Violence brings violence and should be avoided. And if I want to be well, let's tell the truth. I mean, are we selfish? Yes. And what helps us be well? I mean, if we really look, our well-being, it comes when we feel love, when we feel gratitude, when we're connected to others, when we share, when we offer. This is what makes us feel good, to be satisfied. So before we start a path to really cultivate all these qualities, we need to desire them. We need to dream and just say, wow, how wonderful. So I invite you to describe in your mind, you can even write it down. Who do I want to be? From outside in. From inside out. What healthy values do I want to keep? What are the strongholds that I can't let go of? What kind of person do I want to be? Allowing ourselves to dream and going far beyond. And the more we cultivate that desire, the more we imagine, and we say, wow, then gradually we'll take the decisions that will take us in that direction. And in Buddhism, we talk about wanting to become a Buddha, wanting to become a bodhisattva. These are terms that summarize all of these qualities that we want to develop in just a few words. It's that. So when we living a moment where we see things around us, things are going well, we see violence and indifference, when we see extreme materialism and the lack of respect for our environment and those around us, instead of victimizing ourselves and saying, well, I'm a fruit of this society, I can't do much. But a small part of that is true. I was thinking last week, for example, how much plastic we use. Just to give you an example, not from the point of view of pollution, of environment, which is a huge point, but now they're actually giving research on dementia, and they saw that then actually people who had died of dementia, when they analyzed the brain matter, they found like a teaspoon of plastic in their brain. So it's So this plastic, these microplastics are also deposited into a reproductive system in our brain. So I thought to myself, I don't want any of that. So I'm going to diminish my use of plastic out of respect for the environment and out of respect out of my body. So first I need to first to want to I first need to really be clear that using plastic is bad for me, and being without plastic is something it would be something positive. So I really need to cultivate this, because then I have this moment of feeling motivated to not to live without plastic, and then maybe other days it's more convenient if I take plastic. If I don't really cultivate this strongly within me, then my ability to make the right choices will be weaker. So the more I put into my mind this desire to live free from plastic, the more I'll be able to apply it into my daily life, because it's that desire is the strength that's going to condition my strength. It's the strength that's going to condition my choices when I'm in front of, buying something with plastic or not. So it's this it's the aspiration that is creating these possibilities. If we don't generate that desire, then we won't really have this freedom, this free will. So I invite you to desire, to cultivate what we want, how we want to live, who we want to be, and cultivate this society that we want to live in. And little by little, we walk in that direction. But let's allow ourselves to dream. This is fundamental. And just for the last thing, when we allow ourselves to dream, we get out of the position of victimization, and we put ourselves in the position of walking towards the light instead of pointing our finger at the darkness. And this makes all the difference, because often we find ourselves in a time where we see the shadow, we complain about the shadow, and we say, oh, look at all this plastic, and it's so bad for our health, and then we don't change our behavior, because what can I do about it? Society's like this. No, the first thing that I can do if I want to make a change is to aspire to something, and that the stronger that aspiration, the more coherent the choices are going to be. So we change our habits, starting come from our mind. That's the difference. So I will make our dedications now. I thank you for being here, all of you, not just for being here today, but along this path, life after life. I want to remind you that today at 5 o'clock there will be Kundalini Rinpoche, this Lama from India, a friend and a disciple of Lama Michel Rinpoche, who will give 2 days of teachings here and 1 day in Milan. And wonderful to be able to listen to him, a different way of teachings. He will be teaching today and tomorrow to explain the history of our lineage, our tradition, understand a little bit where we come from, etc. It's something really wonderful. He's extremely learned Lama, has wonderful knowledge and experience. So it's wonderful to come. It'd be beneficial for you, and also please come out of respect for him.
Jetsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar tinle chokchur gepada Losan tempe dreme sasumgi drove munsel taktu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dang drame chiki pela longche ching sadan lamge yenten rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyur top sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuya Ninsen taktu delek pe kuncho sumki chingi lop kuncho sumki ngodrubu tsol kuncho sumki trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
At night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
It's not, I'd like to say, it's not yet in the program, but this Thursday on the 5th, in the morning, we will have the Guru Puja, and there'll be a moment of sharing, important, and I ask everyone to be present, please. This Thursday in the morning, everyone who can be present, please be present together. Thank you.